The Shield just reunited in the most explosive and emotional return in WWE history as Dean Ambrose made his shocking comeback to Raw in 2025 to stand alongside Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins against impossible odds. And if you're not absolutely losing your mind at the sight of the most dominant faction in WWE history reforming after years of bitter separation and public animosity, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of this career-defining moment. What we witnessed wasn't just a surprise return, it was the healing of broken bonds that seemed permanently shattered, proving that true brotherhood can survive betrayal, ego, and even years of working for competing companies. The image of Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins standing in formation doing the iconic Shield fist bump while the crowd absolutely erupted with emotion will be replayed for generations as one of the most powerful moments in professional wrestling history. This wasn't just unexpected, it was impossible according to everything we thought we knew about their fractured relationships and Dean's apparent permanent exile from WWE after his bitter AEW departure. The Shield is back. After all these years, after everything that happened, the brothers are reunited. Those weren't just excited words from ecstatic commentators, they were emotional declarations that wrestling's most beloved faction had overcome years of pain, betrayal, and separation to stand together one more time. The tears in their voices captured the genuine emotion of witnessing something fans thought they'd never see again. You want to talk about returns that fundamentally heal the deepest wounds in wrestling history? Dean Ambrose didn't just come back to WWE, he returned specifically to reform the Shield with the two men whose relationships with him had been publicly destroyed through betrayal, ego clashes, and competing company loyalties. The fact that they could overcome all of that to reunite proves that some bonds transcend business and grudges. The setup for this reunion was perfectly orchestrated for maximum emotional impact. Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins were surrounded by at least a dozen hostile wrestlers in a beatdown that seemed hopeless when suddenly the arena lights went completely dark and that unmistakable Shield siren and entrance theme filled the building, sending the crowd into absolute pandemonium before anyone even appeared. But here's what makes this reunion absolutely different from typical nostalgia moments. Dean Ambrose emerged through the crowd wearing Shield tactical gear like he'd never left, moving with the same intensity and purpose that made the Shield legendary, and the way Roman and Seth's faces transformed from desperate concern to overwhelming relief and joy when they saw their brother was genuine emotion that couldn't be faked. The most powerful moment came when Dean reached the ring and instead of immediately attacking the surrounding wrestlers, he stopped and locked eyes with Roman and Seth for what felt like an eternity. You could see years of pain, betrayal, resentment, and unresolved emotion flowing between them before Dean simply extended his fist for the Shield bump and his brothers met it without hesitation. Here's a question that's going to reveal just how emotional this reunion truly was. Did you notice the tears in all three men's eyes during that initial fist bump, suggesting this wasn't just character work but genuine reconciliation between friends whose real relationship had been damaged? The actual fight that followed was vintage Shield dominance that reminded everyone why this faction was so special. The seamless coordination, the instinctive teamwork, the way they protected each other and moved as one unit despite not working together in years, it was like they'd never been apart. The muscle memory and chemistry were undeniable. But the most devastating sequence came when they hit their signature triple powerbomb on the leader of the attacking group, and the roar from the crowd was so loud it literally shook the building. Fans were crying, jumping, screaming with pure joy at seeing the Shield's trademark move delivered with the same precision and impact that made them legendary. The way they cleared the ring of a dozen attackers in under 3 minutes while working in perfect harmony proved that the Shield isn't just three talented wrestlers, it's a special alchemy that creates something greater than the sum of its parts. When these three are together, they're genuinely unstoppable in ways that transcend normal faction dynamics. Quick question for the Shield purists, did this reunion match your expectations, or was it even more emotional and impactful than you imagined it could be after all these years? The most shocking aspect of this reunion is that it happened at all given the very public acrimony between these men. Dean's departure from WWE was bitter and filled with criticism of the company. His subsequent AEW run included shots at WWE and by extension Roman and Seth. The idea that they could reconcile seemed impossible until it actually happened. The investigation into how WWE convinced Dean to return reveals months of secret negotiations that involved not just company officials but also Roman and Seth personally reaching out to their former brother. Sources suggest the three men had emotional conversations about their shared history and the pain of their fractured relationship long before any contract was signed. But perhaps the most emotional revelation is that this reunion was driven by genuine desire from all three men to heal their brotherhood rather than just business opportunity. They all wanted to fix what was broken between them, one source revealed. The wrestling reunion was secondary to the personal reconciliation they'd been working toward privately for over a year. The fact that this wasn't primarily a business decision but rather a personal journey of forgiveness and healing makes it exponentially more meaningful. These weren't just wrestlers reforming a profitable faction, these were friends who had hurt each other working to repair relationships that meant more than any championship or paycheck. Here's another question for the relationship repair experts. Is it possible for friendships damaged as publicly and severely as the Shields to truly heal, or will there always be underlying tension despite this reunion? The most powerful moment came after they cleared the ring when Dean grabbed a microphone and addressed his brothers directly. Roman, Seth, I've spent years being angry about what happened to us, blaming you both for how the Shield ended. But I finally realized that holding on to that anger was poisoning me more than it was hurting you. I miss my brothers, and life's too short to let pride and ego destroy the most important relationships we have. The raw vulnerability and emotional honesty in Dean's words created one of the most genuine moments in WWE history. This wasn't scripted corporate messaging, this was real human emotion about forgiveness, growth, and the importance of valuing relationships over grudges. But the most heartbreaking response came when Seth broke down completely. Dean, you have no idea how much I've regretted breaking up the Shield. Not a single day has passed where I didn't think about what we lost and wish I could take it back. Having you here, standing with us again, it's like a piece of my soul that's been missing finally came home. The admission that Seth has carried guilt about the Shield breakup for over a decade created a level of emotional catharsis that transcended wrestling entertainment. This was genuine healing happening in real time, with millions of witnesses watching three friends forgive each other and reclaim their brotherhood. The fan reaction to the Shield reunion has been absolutely overwhelming, with social media completely melting down from the emotional overload. Wrestling fans worldwide are posting videos of themselves crying, celebrating, and expressing pure joy at witnessing something they thought was impossible. The cultural impact is undeniable. Here's a question about the power of nostalgia. Why does the Shield reunion create such intense emotional responses even from fans who weren't watching during their original run? The most interesting analysis comes from the contrast between this reunion and typical nostalgia returns. Most legendary factions reunite for short-term nostalgia pops before members return to their separate careers, but sources suggest the Shield reunion is intended to be long-term, with all three men committed to working together for potentially years. The investigation into Dean's contract reveals he signed a multi-year deal specifically structured around remaining part of the Shield rather than pursuing individual glory. The commitment to prioritizing the faction over personal ambition shows genuine growth from men who once let ego and individual success destroy their brotherhood. But perhaps the most shocking detail is that all three men apparently took pay cuts to make this reunion financially viable for WWE. Instead of demanding maximum individual contracts, they negotiated as a unit and accepted less money personally to ensure they could work together long-term. The financial sacrifice proves this isn't about money, it's about brotherhood. The revelation that Roman, Seth, and Dean all valued reuniting more than maximizing their individual earnings is unprecedented in modern wrestling. These are main event level talents who could each command premium individual contracts, yet they chose less money to work together. That's genuine love and commitment. The most controversial aspect of this reunion is what it means for the bloodline. Roman Reigns has spent years building his tribal chief character and family-based faction, but the Shield represents a different kind of brotherhood, one based on choice rather than blood. How does Roman reconcile these two identities? Here's a question about character consistency. Can Roman maintain his tribal chief persona while also being part of the Shield, or does this reunion fundamentally contradict the character development he's undergone? The testimonies from bloodline members reveal mixed reactions to Roman's Shield reunion. Some family members apparently feel betrayed that Roman would prioritize chosen brothers over blood family, while others recognize that the Shield represents a part of Roman's history that he needed to reconcile regardless of bloodline politics. The internal tension this creates within the bloodline could lead to fascinating storytelling. Roman might have to choose between his Shield brothers and his Samoan family, or he might find a way to merge both factions into something unprecedented. Either path creates compelling television. But the most important consideration is whether this reunion can avoid the mistakes that destroyed the Shield originally. All three men are now older, presumably wiser, and more aware of how ego and ambition tore them apart before. Will they have learned from those mistakes, or is history destined to repeat itself? The investigation into safeguards they've implemented reveals all three men apparently agreed to specific rules about communication, conflict resolution, and ensuring individual ambitions don't destroy the group. The proactive approach to preventing past mistakes shows genuine emotional maturity. The comparison to other legendary faction reunions reveals that the Shield's return might be the most meaningful. DX reunited multiple times but always felt like nostalgia rather than genuine brotherhood. The NWO reunions were commercial rather than emotional. But the Shield reformation feels like authentic healing that transcends wrestling business. Here's a question for the faction warfare experts: where does the Shield rank among wrestling's greatest factions, and does this reunion elevate or diminish their legacy? The most terrifying implication for the WWE roster is that the Shield is back and more motivated than ever. When three main event level talents who know each other intimately work together with renewed purpose and emotional investment, they become virtually unstoppable. Every other faction should be genuinely concerned. The testimonies from wrestlers who will have to face the Shield reveal a mixture of excitement and genuine fear. Working with the Shield when they're functioning as a unit is unlike anything else in wrestling, one veteran revealed. The coordination, the intensity, the way they elevate everyone around them, it's special and intimidating simultaneously. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect is how this reunion positions all three men for the remainder of their careers. Instead of trying to recapture individual glory that might be impossible at their ages, they're leveraging their collective chemistry and history to create something sustainable that can carry them through their final years. The strategic intelligence of reforming the Shield as a Twilight career move is brilliant. It allows Roman, Seth, and Dean to work less physically demanding matches by sharing the load, while the nostalgia and emotional investment ensures they remain relevant without having to constantly prove themselves individually. The most shocking theory is that this reunion might be the beginning of all three men's retirement tour. If they plan to finish their careers together over the next few years, ending where they started would be poetically perfect and create sustained storytelling through to their eventual farewell. Here's a philosophical question about endings: is it better for wrestlers to retire at their peak or to have extended farewell runs that allow proper goodbyes and legacy moments? The investigation into the long-term creative plans reveals WWE is apparently building toward a massive Shield storyline that could span multiple years and involve every major faction and star on the roster. This isn't just a short-term nostalgia moment, this is the foundation for potentially the final major arc of all three men's careers. But the most important question is simply whether this reunion can deliver on the enormous expectations that come with reforming wrestling's most beloved modern faction. The original Shield set such a high standard that meeting those expectations might be impossible, creating potential for disappointment despite best efforts. The testimonies from the three men reveal they're acutely aware of the pressure but also confident that their maturity and renewed emotional connection will allow them to exceed rather than simply match their original run. "We're better wrestlers now, and more importantly, we appreciate each other more," Seth reportedly said. The coming months will reveal whether the Shield reunion represents the beginning of their greatest chapter or an attempt to recapture magic that can never be recreated. Either way, wrestling fans will never forget the night Dean Ambrose returned to reform the most dominant faction in WWE history. Here's a final question for the entire WWE universe. After watching the Shield reunite with all the emotion and intensity of their original run, do you believe this can last, or is another betrayal and breakup inevitable? The wrestling world is celebrating the impossible reunion of the Shield as Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins proved that true brotherhood can survive betrayal, ego, years of separation, and even competing company loyalties. This wasn't just a wrestling angle, it was genuine reconciliation between friends who valued their relationship enough to swallow pride, forgive past hurts, and reclaim what they lost. The Shield strikes again, and the entire WWE roster should be terrified. The Shield's 2025 reunion represents everything beautiful about professional wrestling: the ability to heal old wounds, forgive past betrayals, and create moments of genuine human connection that transcend entertainment. Dean Ambrose didn't just return to WWE, he came home to his brothers, and Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins welcomed him with open arms despite everything that had happened between them. Together again, the Shield is ready to remind everyone why they're the most dominant faction in WWE history.